secret to tell you. It's not really much of a secret, but maybe it sure seems to be to a lot of people something that they do not understand. I have no desire to tell you what to do with your body at all. I don't want to have to do that at all. But if you say to me you're going to use your body to pick up a shotgun and blow somebody's brains out, I'm going to tell you that you can't do that with your body. That's what I'm going to tell you. By the same token, I'm not going to try to tell a woman that she cannot do things with her body unless I believe others are going to be affected when she does so, and in ways that she should not be considering appropriate or proper. This is what I find so amazing about the concept of my body, my choice. I want to talk today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. By the way, I'm your host. I'm Kurt, and today is Saturday, the 21st of May of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. On Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com, on Minds.com, minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group primarily there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter. But I want to talk today about a concept of vasectomy and abortion, because I heard somebody basically say, or if you think it's okay to expect young women to have abortion or not have abortions when they have children, you should expect it to be okay for young men to have vasectomies until they're ready to have children. Okay, I want to go ahead and get in my notes here, and this hopefully will kind of give you a clue to what I'm thinking. Now, you may already be thinking this is kind of silly anyway, but I really sort of want to address this to explain to people why it is that what they're thinking about this is incorrect. I understand there are those out there who will make the argument that a baby in the womb is not alive. They will at least try to argue for some age of viability, which I've already talked about before. I've talked about this before, and probably will do so again sometime in the near future from another angle. The one thing you need to understand, though, is that most of us arguing against abortion believe that life begins at conception. Even if it didn't, though, at some point while in the womb, a baby would suddenly magically be alive. I'd like to know how you figure that, but regardless, that would be the case. Because, again, I have a niece, should say family member, but I'll say niece since I've put it out there, who had a child at 21 weeks, 6 days, I think it was. So extremely micro-preemie, right? And that baby, that little girl is a great little girl these days. But getting back to what I was saying, we believe that life begins at conception. We argue that miscarriages and spontaneous abortions, if you choose to recognize such a term, are serious and horrible things. Horribly sad things. Horribly sad things. Since the idea of a body is not what drives us, many also argue that funeral services and so forth for a baby who was never born are maybe not all that necessary a thing. To put it another way, we're more interested in the human, in the person. We're less interested in the body that was left behind, whether it's somebody who lived 80 years or somebody who lived 8 days. Nor would any sensible person take it to mean no life ever existed. By the way, I should say one other thing that came to my mind. Nor do we typically, if people have acted in responsible and prudent ways, assume that it's the fault of the mother that the baby was prematurely terminated unless they choose abortion. That said, though, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the idea that young men should be subject to vasectomies when they are young and have to have that operation reversed when they decide they want children, and why it's not remotely the same as a woman's, quote, choice, end of quote, to have an abortion. I want to say, to begin with, that men having vasectomies is far more akin to women having their tubes tied than abortion. It's much more the case. In one case, you're talking about a medical procedure to make procreation impossible to begin with. In the other, we're discussing what to do with a living human being. At least that's certainly what most Christians would say about that in the case of abortion. Again, if you think it's reasonable to require young men to have vasectomies, perhaps you should also agree with a heinous practice from the past of procedures to render mentally deficient people, usually young women, infertile. But remember, In neither case are we talking about a decision regarding two human beings. Again, though they may be made by two or more, but not considering the lives of two or more hanging in the balance. Certainly one hanging in the balance. In fact, that's the point. If you talk about vasectomy or whatever, tubes being tied, you're generally not talking about a life hanging in the balance. That's just a reality. By the way, there's another consideration where vasectomy tying fallopian tubes is concerned. It would be that the decision has typically been made before the creation of a new human. I sort of said that before, but I wanted to sort of emphasize that was the case. The cherry on top, more than enough of the folks who go through vasectomies or tube tying will never be able to have children. Sometimes the procedure can be reversed, but often not. That means you risk people being unable to procreate when you do either thing, tying tubes or vasectomies. I'll be the first to say men and women should both remain abstinent until and unless they're ready to care for and support a potential baby. And let's take the time to move an argument out of the way, shall we? If I told you I couldn't wait to run out in traffic to play, would you say I had every right to do that? I get that sexual activity gives a great deal of gratification. That's not an excuse to engage in it before you're ready to be a parent, which is one of the common results of having sex. Back when it was considered true that children born out of wedlock were illegitimate, I certainly would not argue for going back to such a place. That said, I would say we should go back to a place where we made it entirely obvious to young folks that actions have consequences. Not too many years ago, maybe 70 or 80, people had to grow up very quickly. In the 40s, as a young man, chances were moderately high that you would be shipped off to war. Even if that wasn't the case, though, when you got into your teenage years, it was expected that you would start looking at how to be your own person. These days, we have the luxury of allowing children to go back home in their 30s and 40s. I'm not arguing that's a horrible thing. Even so, I think we need to get back to teaching responsibility before folks are physically able to reproduce. Not stopping them from doing so, but before they're actually really able to do it in the first place. That's my viewpoint. Welcome to it. My notes have lasted rather long because I had some commentary that went in between. It's a simple thing, though. It's really not complicated. The idea of a vasectomy is not the same as the idea of a babyectomy, of taking a baby out of a womb and basically killing that baby. You're not killing the tubes, either the fallopian tubes nor the tubes through which the male reproductive fluid travels. You're not killing them. Now, to be fair, you may be rendering them forevermore inoperable, but that's beside the point. You're not killing them. When there's a baby in that womb, and particularly when the baby is old enough for you to be talking about crazy things like partial birth abortion or all but postpartum abortion, I have news for you. You're no longer talking about a lump of cells, even if you make that argument in the beginning of the pregnancy. And I don't support that argument in the beginning of the pregnancy. As far as I'm concerned, at conception, that baby is born. And there's somebody who talked about something that I want to cover that has to do with the idea that you can take an embryo, freeze it, implant it into somebody, and cause a baby to be born as a result. I have some interesting questions about that I think I may ask in a future podcast if I remember to do that. But that having been said, I still consider, and by the way, well, we won't get into that. I still consider babies at conception to be alive, period. And I don't consider miscarriage or, quote, spontaneous abortion, end of quote, or anything like that to be trite or unimportant. And I consider, from my personal experience, that it causes distress to the woman going through it, particularly if she happens to want a baby. And it causes stress, and I maintain that it probably does regardless whether or not that's the case. But I just want to say this. You're talking about apples and oranges, and I'm sorry, you just are making comparisons that cannot be made. I just want you to know that. The comparisons are not valid. Okay, this has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and it is Saturday, the 21st of May of 2022. That would be the end of the Sabbath in a few hours. That would be at sunset today. For those of you who observe the Sabbath, hope your Sabbath is a good one. Tomorrow will be Sunday, the 22nd of May of 2022. Thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, on the podcast, on YouTube, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page on Facebook, on kurtzreligionpolitics.locals.com, on mindsandmynds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group for this particular video, since I don't think it'll make it anywhere else, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be hearing or seeing me today. Subject for today has been vasectomy or abortion, and tomorrow we're going to talk about the idea of a picture's worth. How much is a picture worth? And I want to kind of get into some things, particularly where forensics are involved, that talk about the idea of picture and video and people's current perspective about that, one such thing being that pictures and video are the, quote, gold standard of evidence. I want to argue that in fact is not the case. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you and continues to do so, and hopefully we will see you on Sunday, the 22nd of May of 2022's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. That will be tomorrow's edition, and again, hopefully we will see you then. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Saturday, the 21st of May of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there, minds.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, and Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind, you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.